0228 hours. The Strait of Hormuz lies still under a moonless sky. The water so black it swallows the wakes of 3 warships cutting south in tight formation. USS Mason leads the column, with USS Arleigh Burke and USS Truxtun trailing in her shadow. Then the horizon detonates. Along the Iranian coastline, dozens of heat signatures bloom at once, blistering streaks of light tearing low across the water, climbing, splitting, converging from 3 separate bearings on the same target. The IRGC has just unleashed a coordinated surprise strike from multiple axes simultaneously, and every one of those signatures is racing toward the Mason at speeds her crew can measure only in seconds remaining. Inside the Combat Information Center, the threat board floods red, faster than a human eye can count. Shahed drones skim in from the northeast. Fast attack craft surge out of coastal inlets to the west. Coastal missile radars light up to the south. This is not a probe. This is a saturation kill attempt designed to overwhelm 3 of the most advanced air defense platforms ever built before they can even finish classifying what is inbound. And the clock is merciless. From first detection to terminal impact, the lead wave gives the task force less than 90 seconds. 90 seconds to sort hundreds of contacts, separate the real from the decoy, and assign interceptors before the first warhead reaches a hull. Get it wrong and the math is catastrophic. Each destroyer carries roughly 300 sailors and represents nearly $2 billion of American power projection. Lose one here, in the artery through which a fifth of the world's seaborne oil flows, and the price isn't measured in ships. It's measured in markets, in coffins, in the kind of regional war that doesn't stop at a coastline. The IRGC believes it has finally found the perfect trap, the perfect water, the perfect night. They believe the sheer density of the swarm will drown the Americans' precision under raw numbers. They have rehearsed this for years, and tonight they are certain the math is on their side. But here is the question that night would answer in blood and static. How do 3 warships survive a coastline that is, all at once, trying to bury them, when the very sensors meant to save them are the first thing the enemy intends to blind? To understand why Iran chose this night, you have to understand how the IRGC sees these waters. The Strait of Hormuz is barely 21 miles across at its narrowest, a flooded canyon where deep draft warships are funneled into predictable lanes, and the Iranian shore is never more than a few minutes of missile flight away. For a conventional navy, this geography is a nightmare. For the IRGC, it is home turf, a place where they have spent 2 decades building a way of war designed not to match American power, but to drown it. Their doctrine has a name the planners themselves are fond of, a phrase that translates roughly to the closing fist. The idea is simple and brutal. You do not sink an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer with 1 superweapon. You sink it with 1,000 cheap problems arriving at the same instant. Tonight, the fist is closing from every direction at once. Swarms of IRGC fast attack craft, the so-called mosquito boats, surge from hidden inlets, each one small, low to the water, and almost invisible to radar until it is dangerously close. Above them, waves of Shahed loitering drones, each costing a fraction of the interceptor needed to kill it, are meant to soak up American missiles by the hundred. But the real engine of the trap is invisible. High overhead, Iranian relay drones weave a living data bridge across the battlespace, streaming real-time targeting feeds between the boats, the coastal command bunkers, and the missile batteries dug into the cliffs. This network lets the swarm think as one organism, redirecting mid-attack, flowing around defenses, dragging the destroyers ever deeper toward the shore where heavy coastal anti-ship batteries wait in ambush. Saturate the radar, sever the Americans from their own picture, and lure them into the kill box. On paper, it is elegant. On paper, 3 destroyers cannot possibly process it all. Iran is betting everything on that arithmetic. What they have not accounted for is that the Americans are not trying to win the numbers game at all. 0241 hours. The first wave hits the outer ring, and the task force answers not with panic but with choreography. Aboard USS Mason, the Aegis combat system snaps to full battle posture. The SPY-6 radar sweeping the horizon in high-resolution bursts, sorting hundreds of contacts into clean firing solutions. The Mark 41 vertical launch cells crack open and the night fills with the roar of rim. 162 ESSM interceptors leaping skyward, each one peeling off to thin the dense column of Shahed drones before they can tip into their terminal dive. Seconds later, the Mark 45 Mod 4 5-inch guns aboard Mason and Truxtun open up in sustained fire, fragmentation rounds stitching a curtain of steel directly across the path of the leading mosquito boats. The forward edge of the swarm simply disintegrates, hulls flipping and burning across the black water. Iran adapts instantly. The surviving Shahed drones drop to wave-top height, skimming only a few meters above the swells, and the reason is surgical. Down there, in the chaos of radar returns bouncing off a million wave crests, the Aegis system must claw every real target out of a storm of sea clutter. The drones aren't just attacking now, they are camouflage. Hundreds of low signatures meant to bury the true vectors of the fast attack craft sprinting underneath them. And to keep that swarm thinking, the coastal relay network floods the boats with a torrent of targeting data, letting them jink and accelerate and slide out of every lock the destroyers manage to achieve. So the formation refuses to fight blind. USS Arleigh Burke peels off from the shooting line and assumes the role of a dedicated tracking platform, lighting up auxiliary sensor modes to hold a second, independent picture of the battle space, while Mason and Truxtun pour everything into interception. It is a quiet, decisive move. The swarm is trying to overload one brain, the Americans simply grow a second one. 0309 hours. The battle changes character entirely. From the deck of USS Abraham Lincoln, EA-18G Growlers come screaming into the fight. And these aircraft do not carry bombs as their primary weapon. They carry silence. Their ALQ-218 receivers map every Iranian emission in the area, while the ALQ-99 pods unleash a wall of jamming aimed at one target above all others, the digital umbilical linking Iran's command bunkers to its offshore swarm. Within seconds, the relay nodes begin to collapse. Deprived of guidance, dozens of Shahed drones lose their minds mid-flight and tumble into the sea, and the mosquito boats, suddenly stripped of their data cocoon, bloom onto American radar screens fully exposed for the first time all night. Truxtun pounces, ripple-firing RIM 174 SM-6 interceptors in surface mode, reaching past the horizon to gut the Iranian command vessels, coordinating the assault. If you'd want this crew watching your back when the sky falls, you already know where to let them hear it. Because at that exact moment, Iran played the card it had been holding in reserve. From concealed bunkers along the cliffs, the IRGC activates its heaviest assets, S-300 fire control radars sweeping the upper air, while coastal electronic warfare complexes hurl concentrated jamming straight at American Link 16 and MADL frequencies. The effect is immediate and ugly. The F-35Cs orbiting above lose their shared tactical picture and are forced into local tracking mode, each pilot suddenly relying only on the onboard AN, APG, 8-1 radar and electro-optical sensors, blind to one another. And Iran reads the gap perfectly. The Mosquito boat fleet executes a high-speed, multi-axis surge, hundreds of craft flooring their throttles and converging on USS Mason from every bearing at once. Arleigh Burke is torn between two priorities: splitting its radar between high-altitude SAM threats and the wall of boats now racing inside the defensive perimeter. Inside Mason's CIC, the inner ring is shrinking by the second, and for the first time tonight, the density of the swarm is threatening to punch clean through the Aegis bubble. 0324 hours. With the swarm clawing inside 2,000 yards, the task force commander makes a call that looks, on its face, like surrender. He orders all three destroyers to bleed off speed and lock into a tight defensive box, hulls drawn close, fields of fire overlapping. Mobility is the price. In exchange, the formation buys something more valuable in this moment: the ability to pour the full processing power of 3 Aegis systems into terminal defense without a single seam between them. Mason and Arleigh Burke unleash continuous volleys of ESSM and a relentless cadence of 5-inch fire, scything down the low-flying Shahed drones trying to clear lanes for the boats. Truxtun holds its SM-6 cells in reserve for the vampires, the high-speed anti-ship missiles that could come screaming off the coast at any second. Then, the range collapses to knife-fighting distance, and the last layer wakes up. The Mark 15 phalanx close-in weapon systems aboard all 3 ships spin up and open fire, their 20mm Gatling guns churning out 4,500 rounds a minute, throwing solid walls of tungsten that simply erase the mosquito boats at point-blank range. Hull after hull vanishes in a spray of fragments. The swarm, robbed of its coordination back when the Growlers severed the relay net, is now arriving in ragged, predictable clumps, feeding itself into a grinder, 0356 hours. The Naval network claws back online, filtering out the Iranian jamming, and the picture snaps clear. The Americans pivot from defense to execution. Truxtun spearheads the seed strike, firing a synchronized salvo of SM-6 interceptors that ride F-35C targeting data straight down the throats of the S-300 sites, homing on the very radar emissions Iran lit up to find the stealth fighters. The coastal batteries vaporize, but here is the truth Iran never saw. The real reason the night was already lost. The decisive weapon was never a missile. It was the Growlers' digital radio frequency memory. That system captured each incoming S-300 radar pulse, processed it in nanoseconds, and threw it back twisted, so that Iranian operators saw not 3 destroyers, but hundreds of Phantom aircraft, each ghost mimicking the speed and signature of a real target. They fired and fired into illusions, emptying their magazines at contacts that did not exist. By the time they understood, their launchers were dry and their positions were already marked for death. By 0450 hours, the closing fist has come apart in the water. With the coastal relay nodes shattered and the command bunkers cut off from the swarm, the surviving mosquito boats abandon the fight entirely, throttles wide open, racing back toward Iranian territorial waters in scattered, leaderless disorder. There is no second wave, there is no fallback. The living network that was supposed to think for 1,000 boats at once is now just so much dead silicon along a burning coastline. As the first gray light creeps over the strait, what was meant to be a perfect ambush has fractured into isolated pockets of resistance, none of them capable of speaking to the others, none of them capable of mounting anything resembling a coordinated attack. USS Mason, USS Arleigh Burke, and USS Truxtun reform their column and continue south, hulls unscratched, magazines lighter but their crews intact. They do not celebrate, they do not even slow down. And that is the quiet, unsettling lesson of the night. Iran brought numbers, and numbers feel like certainty. But numbers are only as strong as the threads connecting them. And the moment those threads were cut, 1,000 weapons became 1,000 strangers firing into the dark. The Americans never had to be everywhere. They only had to sever the one thing holding the enemy together and let the swarm defeat itself. Iron, in the end, bends to information. The side that owns the signal owns the sea. So here is the one I'll leave with you. If you were standing in that combat information center watching the inner ring collapse to 2,000 yards, would you have had the nerve to slow down and trust the box, the way that Commander did? Drop your call below, and if this is the kind of breakdown you want more of, you know what the like and subscribe buttons are for. Sound off, and we'll take the next watch together. This is a hypothetical dramatization built on real platforms and real tensions, not an account of any actual engagement. The weapons are genuine, the night is not,